The Indian High Commissioner insists the plane carrying Gupta wedding guests had permission to land at the Kloof Air Force Base last week. The incident provoked outrage and prompted a government investigation. Now, Belinda Moses was at a briefing today where the Indian High Commissioner spoke. She's with us now. Belinda, you were called in to be briefed about an India-South Africa festival, I understand. A little bit crazy, I think, to expect journalists not to move in for the kill on this big issue.
Yeah, of course. I think the Indian High Commissioner walked in knowing, of course, that journalists were going to ask questions on this, but he did spend around 40 minutes or so still telling us about this Indiafrica Festival that's going to be happening in Johannesburg on the 13th of May. And when it was time for questions, of course, everybody's hands went up and the questions about the Gupta plane started. Obviously, he was very uncomfortable at that time. He was, I think, in a very unenviable sort of position to be fielding these type of questions. And he just repeated the statement that we heard last week, saying that all protocol was certainly from their side observed, the correct channels were used, and from their point of view, he was very defensive, saying that they're not to blame in this being any sort of a debacle, and he believes that there were actually speculative media reports that are out there in the public, and he didn't want to answer anything else on the matter.
I understand he also reiterated that, or it was reiterated during the exchange between journalists and these officials, that Belinda Gupta is in no way related to the actual Gupta family that had a wedding in the country last week.
Well, actually, that was one of the questions that was also put to him, that whether his job is actually still intact, and he basically scurried off, saying that he was not going to answer anything of the sort. But officials that were still left in the media briefing area did say to us that he is in fact not related to the Guptas at all, and any other details that we might need to get from the South African government, which of course are still continuing with that probe from last week.
And it had been speculated from early last week that Belinda Gupta was going to be the fall guy in this whole matter. Does he look like he's under pressure right now?
I think he tried his best to not give anything away. He tried not even to flinch when someone asked him directly that question that you just asked me now about whether or not he stands to lose his job. And there's a lot of pressure not only coming from here in South Africa, but from officials in India as well. He tried his best not to give any clues as to how he felt. I mean, afterwards they, of course, offered lunch to the journalists that were there, and he did stick around to chat to a few people, but he did stay away from those journalists that were hell-bent on getting some answers on the Gupta issue. We know, of course, from the South African point of view, they said that there were 7 working days that were given for the team that's investigating this entire thing to come back with some answers to the South African public. But up until now, we don't know if that's going to be made public. We do know that on Tuesday, though, is the deadline for that 7 working days.
Oh, an eventful press conference indeed. Thanks very much for that update, Belinda Moses.
News that moves. eNCA.com.